Hey everyone, welcome back. It's 2025. So what I wanted to do with this video is just go through some of the key learnings and insights that I took from all the interviews I did last year. And I want to take some of those takeaways, some of those insights, some of those learnings, and share those with you, the ones that I think are most relevant and can help you the most as you're building your business in 2025. So let's dive right in. Number one, the most important takeaway is that product-led growth is not a silver bullet. Now, out of all the founders that I interviewed last year, only one of them had made serious use of product-led growth, and that was David Kelly from AppSumo Originals. I think the danger with product-led growth is that a lot of first-time founders, particularly technical founders, hear that term and they assume that it means that, oh good, I don't need to do any marketing now. I can just build it and they will come. It's kind of that whole rehashed idea again. I haven't had Wes Bush on the show, by the way. I would love to. If anyone's watching this and they know Wes, let me know. I'd love to reach out and hopefully get him to come on and talk a bit more about his angle in terms of product-led growth. But from what I've seen, I think there's a real danger that some founders hear that term and assume that it means that they don't need to do any marketing. And I cannot tell you how many products I've seen that were awesome that nevertheless failed because they just couldn't find any customers. So out of all the founders that I interviewed last year, only one of them was making serious use of product-led growth. And admittedly, he was probably the most successful. So David's doing about $13 million a year at the moment. That's not one product, though. That's across a suite of products. So AppSumo Originals does stuff like BreezeDocs, which competes with DocuSign. They have SendFox, which competes with MailChimp and a lot of other email marketing platforms. And they have TidyCal, which is like a Calendly alternative. Now, what's interesting about David's strategy is that he deliberately picks red oceans. He deliberately picks spaces that have a lot of big competitors because he sees that as validation. And what he tries to do is he makes a product that is sort of a stripped down version of it that is way, way, way cheaper. Usually he sells it on a lifetime deal instead of a subscription basis. So he does it for a really low price as a lifetime deal. And what's interesting about that is that he deliberately picks spaces and industries that have a natural viral component to them. So this is the key thing that I think makes product-led growth work. You need to pick the right space or the right industry for it, the right product category. It's not something that is universal that you can apply to anything. So in the case of BreezeDoc, for example, you are literally sending a document to another business to be signed, whether it's a contract or something else. So you are using BreezeDoc to communicate with all of your clients. So David's whole strategy there is if we create a great enough experience with BreezeDoc, we can leverage that to get in front of more people that might also become users of BreezeDoc. Same thing with SendFox, email marketing software. We're going to reach out to other people that some of whom are going to end up being interested in using SendFox. With TidyCal, same idea. People are booking meetings on my calendar. Those people probably in turn are also booking meetings with other people. If they can see our product, they might adopt it as well. So it's not a universal thing. It is very specific to the product category that you go into. So I think the key takeaway for me is I think product-led growth can be really successful in certain circumstances if you tick all the boxes. But the danger with it that I see is a lot of people hear product-led growth and they try and shoehorn it into their business model or their industry, and most industries just don't work that way. It's not really suitable for them. So I'd be a bit cautious about it unless all the stars align and you happen to be in a space where particularly a product is being used to communicate with either lots of coworkers, lots of customers, lots of suppliers, someone else who is likely to become a customer of your product at the end of the day, and that communication is essential to the value proposition of the product. Okay, second thing on my list is that the impact of AI on content marketing and SEO is really changing things. Content is still king. Most of the people that I interviewed are doing content marketing. That's either their main channel or one of their main channels. I think a lot of first-time founders rush and spend money on ads, and that almost always ends up with them just pissing lots of money away. Wouldn't recommend it. And I say that as a guy who cut my teeth learning how to do paid ads and conversion rate optimization. That was kind of the first skill set that I learned. But content marketing is really where it's at in terms of SaaS. However, that's changed enormously over the last 12 to 18 months with ChatGPT and the rise of all the and Claude and all the AI tools that are popping up now. So there's a couple of interesting insights about that. The first one is that there are all these tools that have popped up that are making it easier to do content marketing. And it's basically just ChatGPT with a shitty little wrapper around it to make it easier to write blog posts or write cold emails or write something else. The problem with that is that now the internet is awash in so much AI-generated content that both Google and human users are having a really hard time filtering out the good stuff from all the crap that's out there. And there is so much more crap out there now. I did an interview with Nenad Lazarevich, who's an absolute beast at SEO, and he ran a few tests on this, and he found out that Google doesn't penalize AI-generated content per se, but Google does penalize low-value content. And so the overlap between those two things is that a lot of AI-generated content tends to be pretty low quality. So if you are just using ChatGPT to generate a blog post and hitting publish without going through and really comprehensively editing that blog post, you're probably going to be able to make some headway in the short term, but there will come a time when that is going to catch up with you, and that's going to be really, really ugly. So I would strongly urge you not to just ChatGPT, blog post, publish. There's still got to be a human lay in there. There's still got to be a human, quality control to make sure that the article itself is useful to the people reading it. It's not just purely written for SEO. And you can spot that a mile away. You can spot it. I can spot it. Everyone can spot it. The second really interesting part about how AI is affecting content marketing and SEO came up in my conversation with Lars Lofgren. Now, that interview hasn't gone live yet. I think I'll stick a link up here when it does. So Lars is a really interesting guy, like a really, really accomplished marketer. He used to be the head of marketing for Kissmetrics at one point. And when I spoke to him, he'd been building this affiliate business that was doing many, many millions of dollars a year. And it was all tumbling apart now because of the changes that Google had made to the way that they're dealing with AI-generated content. Lars called it the Wild West. He said it is batshit crazy at the moment. And so the key takeaway from that conversation is that I think in 2025, it's almost impossible to distinguish an SEO strategy from a Reddit strategy, because Reddit is the big beneficiary of all of this AI stuff. And there's two reasons for it. The first reason is that Google is having a hard time figuring out what content is legit and what content is not, because there is all this AI-generated content being posted on the internet now. So Google has adapted their algorithm, and they're really prioritizing results from Reddit because they're more likely to be user-generated. At the same time, we're seeing it from the other end. Humans are trying to filter out all the AI-generated crap. And so what you're seeing is a lot of search queries now that have Reddit on the end of it. So, best gym clothes for a 40-year-old man, Reddit. Best sports shoes, Reddit on the end. Because they don't want to read, 10 different derivative blog posts that are all written by AI. They want to go through and see an actual human making a recommendation. And so between those two forces, all that is kind of converging and pointing to Reddit being, the depository of all wisdom, I suppose. That's where everything is leading towards. And what's interesting about that is that a Reddit moderator or the moderator of a subreddit has an enormous amount of power, because they decide what content gets seen by Google and what content doesn't. So to a very large extent, Reddit is SEO in 2025. And I don't think that you can have an SEO strategy that ignores or neglects Reddit because of how things are shaking out. Now, that's not always going to be the case. It might be a short-term kind of temporary situation, but something to be mindful of if you are developing an SEO and content strategy for 2025. Reddit probably needs to be a part of that. I know just from personal experience, I took over the SaaS marketing subreddit a while back, about the start of last year, 2024. When I took it over, there were about 200 members in that subreddit. Now there's about 5,000, so it's grown pretty significantly. And so that gives me a really awesome way to distribute the content that I create. I'm not saying that's necessarily a strategy for everyone, but it happens to be working pretty well for me, and it might be something that you want to consider doing as well, especially given all the stuff that's happening with AI, all the stuff that's happening with Reddit, rocketing up in terms of the amount of traffic that they're getting from Google now. So that was kind of the interesting insight about how AI is affecting content marketing and SEO, and what you can potentially do to position yourself to take advantage of that this year. Hey, it's Ryan here. I'm glad you're enjoying the video. Listen, if you want to meet me or some of the people that I interview, you should really join the Startup Source SaaS founder community. It's a private Slack group for SaaS founders based outside of Silicon Valley who are past the idea stage and want to focus on growth. About 30% of our members are doing over $1 million a year in revenue, so it's a pretty high caliber group. You'll get access to regular mastermind calls and workshops, and every week we share exclusive marketing tactics and resources that you can use to grow your business faster. So, if you want to give yourself an unfair advantage and learn from other SaaS founders who are 1 or 2 steps ahead of you, head over to startupsource.com and sign up. I think there's a link in the description down below as well. Anyway, I'll see you in there. Okay, the third interesting takeaway from 2024 is that controlling churn starts before a customer even signs up. Now, I had 2 interesting conversations about churn in particular, both with guys who'd built, 7-figure SaaS businesses. One was Aaron Cassover from Agent Methods. I'll stick a link up here. And the second one was Tim Cool from Smart Church Solutions. Also, I'll stick a link up here as well. And I'll put those in the description as well. It's worth watching both of those interviews. So what's interesting about those guys is that they both do mandatory onboarding. You cannot use their product unless you talk to someone and do a demo with them first, which seems wild. Like most SaaS founders I talk to, they want something that's really low touch. They don't want to talk to anyone. They just want someone to come to their website and click a button and pay them money and go off and use the product. And they don't want to have to interact with people that much. And I get it, like that would be nice. You sit on the beach sipping cocktails, watching the money come into your bank account without having to do any work. But the reality is that to build a successful SaaS business in many cases, you got to talk to people, or you've got to have someone on your team who talks to people. As far as churn is concerned though, that onboarding piece makes a huge difference for them because everyone who starts using their product knows what it can do and how to do it. And when they get started, they're far more likely to be successful. So that's the first part of their kind of churn reduction strategy. Second piece for Aaron was that he kind of analyzed years and years and years of data, and he looked at what traits businesses had in common that were far more likely to be sticky and be customers in the long run versus customers who stuck around for a month or 2 and then churned. On the interview, he even says it took him way longer than it should have to realize this. But his customers are insurance agents. And he says that in the insurance agent world, you go and you do a course on this, and then you come out and you start your business as an insurance agent. Within 13 weeks, a couple of months, just over 3 months, half of all insurance agents that have started will quit. Okay, so 50% of those customers will not be in business after 13 weeks, which is wild. They normally say most new businesses, 90% of them fail within the first 12 months. Well, 50% of insurance agents fail within the first 3 months. So consider that for a moment. So he looked at all these metrics, and one of the ones that he found was most accurate was if you've been in business for more than 12 months as an insurance agent, you've probably got your business figured out. You've probably got a book of business. You've probably got customers. You've probably got enough revenue to sustain yourself. You probably know what you're doing in terms of businessing. And so one of the key moments for him was when you sign up to start using Agent Methods, they will ask you a bunch of questions and they will filter you out based on a few different factors, but one of them being how long you've been in business for. If you've been in business for less than 12 months, they will not take you as a client. And to me, that sounded wild because, and he acknowledged this too. When you're first starting out, they just took anyone who wanted to pay them. I think that's how you have to start a business. Early on, if someone wants to give you money, just take it and figure it out later. But I think the danger is that so many SaaS businesses keep on doing that for too long. And I think you eventually get to a point where you've grown enough, but you really need to get serious about it. And that means making some hard choices about which customers you accept and which customers you turn away. And that's a difficult transition period because you're turning away all this revenue. And that takes a lot of guts as a founder to do that. But the rewards are worth it because what Aaron was saying is that the burden on support, most of the people that were likely to churn were people who hadn't really figured out their business, didn't have much revenue coming in, and they were constantly asking for help, needing support. So they were using up most of the support resources, they were contributing the least amount of revenue, and they were probably going to churn after a couple of months anyway, which was just madness for everyone. So by implementing that framework, implementing that rule of you got to be in business for 12 months and a few other things that indicate that you're going to be a long-term client, that model was over 90% accurate. And so he reduced his churn rate massively simply because they started off by taking the right customers to begin with. And that whole transition period to getting to that point was fairly painful, and he had to turn a lot of people away. And it really sucks as a founder saying, hey, this is not the right product for you. You should probably go and work with a competitor instead. However, he's now, that was the moment where the real inflection point in his growth really began. And he's doing phenomenally well now, in no small part because he really got his churn under control, because he was rejecting those high churn risk customers. Tim Cool's story is a little bit different. So Tim Cool is, I think at the time I interviewed him, he was doing $4 or $5 million a year in revenue. So, done pretty well. And he did that as a solo non-technical founder too, which is really impressive. And he was actually at the point where he had net negative churn. We kind of discussed that a little bit in the episode, so go and check it out if you're not sure what that is. But essentially it's this magical nirvana-like state where even if you don't get any more customers in a month, you get 0 new customers in a month, and some of your customers leave, your revenue still grows. Because there are so many customers that are upgrading, like all that expansion revenue that we talk about. So many customers are upgrading or buying additional modules or doing something else to end up spending more money with you, and that more than offsets the customers that you're losing in any given month. So he's been there for a while, which is an amazing place to be, and most SaaS businesses never get close to that, but he had it figured out. And we kind of unpacked some of the strategies behind it. It's not an accident. Like, it's very deliberately a product of a whole lot of different steps and actions that he took along the way. So check out that video if you want to see exactly what he did. But he does paid onboarding as well. You actually have to pay him for the right to learn how to use the product and do a demo with him. And there's reasons for that. There's multiple stakeholders involved typically, and quite often they need to send someone out to their site physically, and there's a few other bits and pieces included with that. What he was saying is that he keeps his customers on average for something like 4 or 5 years, which is insane. Like, most SaaS founders I talk to, they're struggling to keep their customers for more than 1 year. Here he is keeping his average customer lifetime is over 4 years, which is wild. Part of that is because he really, really, really deeply understands the customer. Part of that is because he's very selective about who he works with, who he allows to become a customer, and all the prep work, all the training, everything else that is done at the very beginning to give them the best chance possible of being successful. The way that he structures his pricing is really interesting as well, and that's a real big key to this whole net negative churn thing. So anyway, definitely go and check out that interview, because I think there's some really interesting insights there that you can use to really reduce the churn rate in your business in 2025. And at the end of the day, that's really important, because you can grow and you can grow, but eventually you're just treading water because you're losing as many customers as you're getting every month. And until you get that churn piece figured out, that's a real barrier to you growing any further. So really important to get that under control as early as you possibly can. Fourth key takeaway for 2025 is not to discount the value of a phone call or a face-to-face interaction. At the end of the day, people still do business with other people. Again, I know most people who start SaaS businesses are more technical founders, and most technical founders would really rather not talk to people if they could avoid it. They just want to build the product and have people show up and give them money for it. And don't worry, I'm not a technical founder. I would still rather not have to do phone calls or not have to go and visit people all the time. However, it depends a lot on what your customers want and how your customers want to be communicated with. The best example of this was the interview I did with Nick McHenry. He had a really interesting story because he runs One Shop Retail, and it's basically a SaaS product for bricks and mortar retail stores. And they started just before the pandemic in 2020, which completely changed things. But so he raised around a VC, and I think he raised 1.2 million, something like that. Burnt through basically all of it, didn't really have much to show for it at the end of it. And the thing that saved his business was throwing all that typical VC advice out the window about, really scalable marketing channels and focus on ads and SEO and stuff like that. You know what he did instead? He got on a plane, or he got in his car, and he went out and he visited his customers face to face. That was the game changer for him. He did lots of phone calls and stuff as well, but physically going and meeting his customers or potential customers, making a connection with them face to face, that was what separated him from all of his competitors. If you think about it, these people run bricks and mortar stores. They thrive on face-to-face interaction with people. That's the way that they do business, and that's the way they want people to do business with them. So he was saying that the most successful channel for him by far was, so he did that initially. The more scalable version of that is that he would go to events and conferences and speak. And if you watch the interview with him, Nick's a really high energy, charismatic, fun sort of dude. So you can see people naturally being pretty drawn to him. So I can see that being really effective for him. But the other channel that was working really well for him was resellers. And he says that, if you want to sell someone, like a point of sale system or something else, most of that usually starts with someone coming into the store, striking up a conversation with the owner and talking to them. Usually, it's a reseller and they've got all this other stuff that they can sell to that person, but that relationship starts with a face-to-face interaction. It doesn't necessarily have to be face-to-face though. So I did another interview with Mehdi Ali from HelloWash. Now, he had an interesting story because his product is effectively AI agents for call centers. Initially, he started off doing it in the restaurant industry because that's the space that he comes from, but he found that there were some real barriers to making that work. So he pivoted his whole business and kind of applied the same technology, but to a completely different industry in car washes. So a lot of car washes have call centers. They get a lot of phone calls. Some of it's pretty basic. Some of it's a bit more involved. And so what his software, what his AI tool is able to do is to handle a lot of the lower level calls, so it frees up the sales agents to focus on the higher value calls, the sales opportunities, all that kind of stuff. So the interesting thing about Mehdi is that his biggest sales channel or his biggest marketing channel is just literally picking up the phone and cold calling car washes. He's got this big list, and anytime he's got a break in between stuff that he's doing, he'll pick up the phone and he'll make a cold call or two, and that's how he juggles it and gets it done throughout the day. I think if you're a founder, quite often you've got this meeting and then you've got to worry about product stuff and then you're talking to this person, your day's pretty full, but there's usually these awkward little periods of time in between those meetings. It might be for half an hour, it might be an hour, it might only be for 15 minutes. And so his whole strategy with cold calling is literally just pick up the phone, call them, and line up a time for an actual demo. He doesn't try and sell them on the cold call itself. All he's trying to do is tell them what he can do for them. If that's interesting, let's line up a time for a quick demo, and then that goes in the calendar. And that's how Mehdi's able to consistently work a few cold calls every single day into his calendar. So he gets to the end of the week and he's reached out to a whole bunch more potential customers. I think a lot of founders struggle to kind of juggle working on product with meetings with the team, with doing marketing, with doing sales, with doing wearing all the different hats. And quite often the thing that falls by the wayside is generating enough new business. So Mehdi's strategy of just anytime I've got a few minutes in between a call or something else, I pick up the phone and I bash through 2 or 3 cold calls just to line up, and his cold calls only take a couple of minutes because he's literally just trying to line up an actual demo call with someone. So that struck me as being a pretty clever tactic as well, and it's working amazingly well for him. Going back to Aaron Kassover before from Agent Methods, he said one of the biggest game changers for him is when he realized that he didn't want to talk to people, and the way that he buys tech products is just to go in, sign up for a trial, fiddle around with it himself, go in and play with it a little bit himself. But the big light bulb moment for him is that he realized that his customers, insurance agents, they don't work that way. They're wired differently. They want to talk to someone. They spend all day answering questions for their clients. It's very much a people interaction kind of business, whether that's over the phone or indeed in person. And so when Aaron started communicating to his customers the way that they wanted to be communicated with, that's when his conversion rate really shot up. That was one of the main things that moved the needle for him in terms of conversions was doing those demo calls and putting a really strong emphasis on talking to potential customers before they even were able to jump in and sign up for a trial. So the key takeaway from all of this is if you're someone who hasn't tried doing demos, picking up the phone, talking to customers, even going out and visiting them face to face if the economics of that stack up for you, instead of trying purely online channels and being as impersonal as possible, I think, post-COVID, post-AI, post everything else, Humans are craving connection, and at the end of the day, people do business with other people. So don't be afraid to reach out to people and talk to them. And you might find that has a wonderful impact on conversions, that has a wonderful impact on retention, that has a wonderful impact on even you just getting ideas and being able to understand people. I know that talk to your customers more is a bit of a throwaway line in the startup world. And there are some spaces where that's just not possible. I mean, if you're building a dev tool, good luck getting devs to pick up the phone and talk to you. That's going to be really difficult. But if you are selling to a target audience that does a lot of business over the phone or in person, you should maybe try doing more business with them over the phone or in person. You'll probably see some improved results. That brings me to key insight number 5. And this was from the very first interview that I did. This was with Andy Allen from Hike SEO. So it's a do-it-yourself SEO tool aimed at really small businesses, the kind of businesses that they don't know how to do SEO. They may not have the budget to hire an agency to do it for them. And they're looking for a tool that they can use that is going to make that whole process way easier. They understand that SEO is important, but they just don't have any real way of doing it because it's a bit of a difficult industry with a lot of jargon, and there's a lot of skill involved in learning how to do that effectively. One of the big things that came out of that conversation is this idea of doing software with a service. So it's not pure play SaaS subscription revenue. And it's not strictly a service business either, but they do a little bit of both. And what's appealing about that is that there was a time, particularly when I first got into the startup world, where the conventional wisdom is that you raise a ton of money from investors, and then you build this awesome product, and then you focus on really scalable marketing channels. Most of them were digital, so SEO, email marketing, paid ads, maybe affiliates. Those are your main marketing channels. And you grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, and you're burning all this cash along the way until you get so big and you've got so many customers and you've got all this recurring revenue coming in. That's when it starts to really pay off. Now, that doesn't work so well for bootstrap businesses, and increasingly, the happy days of free and easy money are long gone now. So investors are quite often pushing startups to generate revenue faster, reach profitability faster. And so there is more of an appetite now for other revenue streams beyond just the SaaS subscription revenue. And a lot of successful SaaS businesses that I see now, they have at least one other revenue stream that's pretty significant for them. And this is not just bootstrap businesses, by the way. So Shopify, for example, they have their subscription revenue. They also take a cut of your sales. They take a percentage of your sales as well. But they have a payment processing business that is gigantic. If someone buys through a Shopify store, the default option is that it uses Shopify's own payment processor, and they take a cut of that. That business generates a huge amount of revenue for them now. In the case of Hike, which is obviously a much, much, much smaller business than Shopify, Hike found that they were offering this tool to their customers, small businesses who wanted to do SEO. But a lot of them would start using the tool and go, oh, this is cool, but I don't have time to do it. Can you just do it for me? And they said, no. Can you just do it? And eventually they got enough people requesting it. They thought, you know what? Yeah, look, let's just do it for them. The danger that they encountered, though, is that they were making so much more money out of the service component than they were out of subscriptions, that they ended up turning into mostly a service business with a few subscriptions on top of it. And then they had this moment of realization where they said, whoa, hang on. Like, that's not why we started this business in the first place. Let's pull back a little bit from this. We want to do some services, but we don't want to just mostly focus on services. Otherwise, we would have started an agency. So for them, the key part of that journey was what Andy called finding the perfect shade of gray. So how much service and how much subscription do we do? Where do we draw that boundary? Is there a very clear-cut delineation between this is the service that we do, this is everything else that we don't do? So you can do it yourself, or we will do this limited amount of service for you. Anything else, that's on you. Now, you don't necessarily have to do the services yourself. Quite often what we're seeing is that SaaS businesses will put together like a marketplace of freelancers or contractors that can help you implement it. For example, Kajabi has a network of Kajabi experts that you can use to help you, design your website or implement some sales funnel or something like that. They know the platform and they can set it all up for you. I know that Lemlist and Instantly, they are cold email tools, and they have a list of vetted cold email agencies and freelancers that can help you. They can run the campaign for you. So quite often, you don't need to provide the actual service yourself. You can get other people to provide the service and maybe take a cut. That's another revenue stream for you. But it also means that you are solving a problem for your customer. If you don't offer that service, whether it's in-house or delivered by a third party, if you don't offer that service, they might just look around and find a competitor that will. So I think that offering a service, or at least having another revenue stream, is a really important differentiator, from a customer retention standpoint. It's another revenue stream that certainly helps because the subscription revenue is great, but it takes a while to get going. There's another example that wasn't an interview necessarily. This came from the Startups or SaaS founder community. This is the paid community that I run for more advanced SaaS founders. So we do workshops. We get a lot of our members to kind of give these workshops, and most of them are private because they're sharing stuff that's a bit sensitive, obviously. But there's a few that we share publicly. And so if you go to our YouTube channel, I'll stick a link somewhere around here. Adam White, who is a really interesting serial entrepreneur. He's started and sold like 9 businesses or something crazy. He had a business called SEOjet. And it was a tool that would find backlink opportunities for you. So you're doing SEO, it will go out, it will find, hey, you can get a backlink here, you should get a backlink here, you should get a backlink here, which is useful. But what he was finding is that a lot of people didn't just want the backlink opportunity, they didn't want to know about it so much as they just wanted someone else to build the backlink for them. And so what he was doing to grow, like he knows a lot about ads. And so he was doing paid ads to grow, and it was working okay, but he was finding that he just, all the money that he was making would just go straight back into the customer acquisition cost. He wasn't able to sort of get enough margin on that to make it viable. So he was spending all this money on ads, trying to drive the cost down. And then he had this light bulb moment. He thought, hang on, what if I just found a backlink building agency and I partnered with them? And so instead of just, so what happened in the interface is when you go in, it would identify a backlink opportunity, and then there would be a button next to it saying, get someone to build this link for you. And people would click that link, they would go through to his partner's website, they would buy a backlink building package, and Adam would get a cut from that. And that affiliate revenue from that relationship, that meant that his customer lifetime value was so much higher, which meant that he could now afford to spend more money on ads to acquire a customer, because a customer was worth significantly more revenue to him. So he could plow more money into ads, and his business really started growing at that point. He'd spent so much time focusing on trying to cut the costs down to make it work, instead of how do I push up the total revenue that I'm generating per customer, like the lifetime revenue of a customer. How do I build that up? That was the game changer in that business, and he ended up selling it and was super successful and all the rest of it. So key takeaway from that is if you look at your business and you think about all the other products and services that people use before, during, and after they use your product, those are all opportunities to partner with someone, or services that you might even be able to deliver in-house, or even software tools that you could potentially recommend and get an affiliate cut from as well. So instead of thinking about your SaaS business in a vacuum and just focusing on the subscription revenue, there are lots of other revenue opportunities out there, and some of them are pretty easy to turn on fairly quickly that have much higher margins. So you might want to think about, in 2025, what else can we sell to our existing customers? And does it make their experience much better? Does it bring in a lot more revenue? Does it allow us to increase our marketing spend so that we can acquire more customers and grow a bit faster? If the answer is yes to any of those things, I think you'd be crazy to ignore those other secondary revenue streams. Secondary revenue streams are important. Don't neglect them. So key takeaway number 6 from 2024 is about sales. And sales is interesting. When I first started out, I was terrified of doing sales. I'm reasonably good at it now, but when I first started out, I hated it. And it just felt so awkward and unnatural, and the idea of picking up the phone and calling someone and trying to convince them to give me money for something that they weren't even necessarily looking for, I had all kinds of ick about it. It just didn't naturally sit well with me. The kind of the way that I reframed it, though, is I've actually got something that's really valuable and really helpful here. And if I don't get this in front of someone, they are missing out. I'm doing them a disservice by not telling them about this awesome thing that I've got. And that helped, and things got easier over time. But But I interviewed Scott Cowley, who is a sales expert. He runs a thing called the Sales Mastermind, and he helps particularly not natural salespeople, like founders who are not natural salespeople, but have to do sales. And he helps them to either get better at selling themselves, or he helps them to hire a sales team the right way, and gives them what they need to be successful and hit the ground running. So I was picking his brain about the right way to structure a sales call and what you need to do. And a really interesting interview, a really tactical interview, by the way. So if you're not great at sales or you want to get better at sales in 2025, make sure you go and check out that interview, because there's some real gold nuggets in that. One of the biggest gold nuggets from that interview, though, was he talked about this idea that when you're selling to medium and large size businesses, price is not the barrier. In 99% of cases, price is not the big sticking point for them. The big sticking point is the inertia that they've built up, because that's the way they've always done things. So if you're selling to one person and they adopt a new product, they've got to learn how to do it. If you're selling to a big business and there's a team of 100 people who have to learn how to use that new product. Okay, to make that happen, you need to train people to train everyone else on how to do it. So you need to train the trainers, then get the trainers to train everybody else on how to use the new product. You need to rebuild all the integrations, because no doubt that software product they were using before is plugged into everything else that they're using. Someone has to come in and rebuild all of those integrations, and that's a separate bit of work. And then someone needs to project manage all of these things. The adoption of a new software product is a big project in and of itself, because there's so many moving parts with it. So adopting a new software product is so difficult the bigger a company gets. And so his big kind of secret hack is, if you're selling to, this is part of the reason, incidentally, why if you can get an enterprise customer or even a medium-sized customer, that's really good, because they tend to be pretty sticky, just because it's such, once they switch to you, they're not in a great rush to switch away from you, because there's so much work involved in switching to something else. But he said the biggest hack, if you're selling to medium and large size businesses, is instead of thinking about how you can make your pricing more affordable, start thinking about what you can do to make adoption much easier, as easy as possible. Can you offer to build the integrations for them? Can you do some customization work for them? Charge them for it, obviously, but quite often they've got money to spend. Money is not the barrier. It's just, it's going to be so much work getting this, and because it's so much work, I'm going to get pushback from people that don't want to do it, because it's going to be a distraction and everything else. And make it as easy as possible for them to become a customer and to actually get properly onboarded and using it. And they're likely to be so much more successful, and they will stick around forever, because if they had a great experience with you and your product's good, they're not going to go anywhere else. That's a bit of a mindset shift that a lot of founders need to make. Selling to small businesses is very different to selling to medium and large size businesses. Small businesses, you're generally dealing with the owner directly, and they can pick something up and start using it very, very quickly. But as soon as businesses start to get lots and lots of employees, they start getting layers of middle management involved. They get different teams using different workflows, and you've got all these integrations and everything that's got to play nice with. That's when things start getting a little bit difficult in terms of adoption. So if you can think about ways that you can make it much easier for those businesses to use your product, you can reduce all the work involved in onboarding, even if that means you've got to build integrations or do some extra customizations or something else. Charge them for it, but offer that. You're probably more likely to get the sale if you offer to make it as easy as possible for them to get started, and you charge them for the work that's involved in that. They're going to be paying for it either way, whether they're paying you or they're paying someone else, or they're paying their own internal team members, or they're paying for it in terms of lost productivity in their internal team members. So they're going to pay for it either way. They might as well pay you to do it, so you get some additional revenue, and it's much easier for them to say yes and agree to become a customer, if you're able to make it as easy as possible for them. So that's a little hack that you might want to think about if you're trying to build up, more enterprise customers in 2025. And that brings us to number 7, and this is our final one. Bit of a fun one for you. So the key takeaway for me in 2024 is that podcasts are actually a really cool marketing hack. for a few different reasons. So I had Stuart Townsend on the show, and he runs a thing called Podcast Talk, which makes it much easier for, if you want to be a guest on podcasts, you can use his tool to find guesting opportunities on all sorts of different podcasts. Makes that whole outreach process way, way easier. So go and check it out. Stuart was a really interesting guy because he built the channel partnerships team at Zendesk. He's done channel partnerships in a whole bunch of other places as well. And we kind of did a bit of a deep dive into how he manages that as well. That's another important channel. But as far as podcasts are concerned, I don't think I've ever actually talked about this publicly yet, but the reason why I started this podcast is because I knew I needed to get more content out into the world. There's a lot of knowledge that I've got in my head, and there's a lot of knowledge in lots of other people's heads that is legitimately really useful, can save you so much time and hassle and heartache as you're building a SaaS business. Sometimes the best way to learn is just to surround yourself with smart people who've already been there and done the thing that you're trying to do. And so what I'm trying to do with this podcast is find those people, suck the knowledge out of their head, and then present it to you in the most digestible form possible. I tried doing that via blog posts at first. Thought written content, that's great. I'm a pretty good writer, but the problem is that I'm slow, and I would sit there and I'd be a perfectionist and I'd second guess myself, and then I'd think, oh, hang on, I've got to go and get more research, and it was just taking me forever to get a blog post out. If you go to our website now, there are a few blog posts that are out there, but very, very, very few of them. And most of them, I got someone else to help me write. So I tried writing blog posts and it just wasn't working for me. And then I tried doing videos. This one here, I'm doing to a camera, which I still find a little bit weird, to be honest. I find it much easier to talk to someone. I don't know if it's like a body language thing or a feedback thing or something else, but I find it a little bit awkward. Stick a camera in front of me and talk to it. I'm getting a little bit better at it, I hope. Maybe not. We'll see how this video turns out. But I found that really awkward. And it's like, I can't just crank one of these out every single week. This just feels weird and unnatural for me. But the thing that worked for me was, okay, can I get someone who is smart, has really interesting things or a really cool story to share or some great insights and information that would legitimately be useful to people? Can I get them on a podcast and can I ask them questions to kind of unlock that knowledge? And that's sort of been the sweet spot for me. That's something that I find much easier to maintain. So I started a video podcast. What's nice about that is that I do one episode that runs for about an hour and a half. And out of that one video, there is a YouTube video, there is an audio version. I know we haven't put those out yet. That's coming. That's on my list for 2025. So we'll do an audio version of this as well. But then you can slice it up and you can do lots of little clips. You can do shorts. You can do everything else. And then you can turn all of that one hour and a half long interview. You can turn that into a blog post with show notes. You can even possibly turn that into multiple blog posts or combine a few different interviews, take the best bits from each one, stick that into a compilation blog post. You get so much content out of this one interview that you've done. So in terms of content generation, podcasts, I think from a founder's perspective, if you've got the gift of the gab a bit and you're good at talking to people and you're reasonably good on camera, then I think that podcasts can be a really good way of getting lots of content without being a huge blocker in terms of your time as a founder. The second thing that I think is really valuable about podcasts is that it gives you a great excuse to reach out and talk to people that you want to talk to. I've got a whole background in cold email. That was one of the core marketing skills that I had. I used to run a cold email agency. I ended up shutting it down. That's a whole separate story. But we turned all the insights, everything that we learned from running a cold email agency for SaaS, we turned that into a course. You can check that out. There's a link down in the description if you want to do cold email in 2025. Anyway, the cool thing about cold email is that I realized that whole 6 degrees of separation thing is true. You are probably 6 degrees of, if you've never heard of that before, someone who knows someone who knows, multiply that out 6 times, you can reach anyone on the planet within 6 different people. So you probably know someone on LinkedIn and, their brother went to school with this person who is friends with the president of the US or, the Mark Zuckerberg or whoever you want to talk to. So we're not as disconnected as you might think. And the crazy thing about cold email is that you can email really, really, really senior people, and provided that it's a good email, provided that you catch them at the right time, provided that, you tick a few other boxes, you'll get a response from them. I had Seth Godin respond to my cold emails. I've had quite a few, a whole lot of other people respond to my cold emails. Lars Lofgren, I literally sent him a LinkedIn message and said, hey, I read this blog post of yours. It was awesome. Would love to connect. And he did. So people aren't as difficult to reach as what you might think. The cool thing about a podcast is it gives you an excuse to engage with people that you want to talk to. Maybe down the line you might do business with them. Maybe down the line, something will come of that relationship. You can refer someone to them, they can refer someone to you, whatever it is. But just starting that relationship is often the difficult thing. And so having a podcast is a really good excuse. Hey, you've got some interesting stuff. I'd love to get you to talk about it. And most people, are pretty open to that. Call it an ego thing, call it, something else. But most people are pretty flattered if you reach out and say, hey, I'd love you to, express more about your thoughts about this particular topic because I think you'd be really interesting. And I've been pleasantly surprised at how many people will say yes to jumping on a relatively unknown small podcast simply because I asked. So if the first marketing hack for podcasts is that you get all this content out of one bit that can be repurposed in a bajillion different ways, the second part of that puzzle is that it gives you an excuse to reach out and potentially approach like your dream 100. Pick out 100 companies that you want to talk to, email the CEO or the marketer or the decision maker that you want to talk to, invite them on your podcast. Even if only 6 people ever watch or listen to that podcast, doesn't matter, because now you've got a direct relationship with the person that you might want to sell to in the future. So that aspect I think is really important. And it doesn't have to be customers as well. You might want to reach out to influencers. You might want to reach out to anyone with an audience that you potentially want to partner with. The third thing that I think is really interesting though is that it's a really easy way to get backlinks. So if you're just starting out, for the last decade, Neil Patel and everyone else is banging on about content marketing and how you should do guest posting as a way of building backlinks. Now, the problem is that's become so saturated now. If you try doing guest posting, you can write the most amazing blog post in the world. You send it to anywhere that's half decent, and they will say, okay, but you're going to have to pay us for a backlink. And so you've got to pay them, and you've got to put all the work and time and effort and money into creating a really kick-ass blog post. There's a lot of work and a lot of expense with that just to get a damn backlink. However, with a podcast, you can ask for a backlink in the show notes and nobody ever asks you to pay for it, which is wild. So you are getting a backlink from potentially a really, really, really high authority site. And not only are you getting an opportunity to talk to their audience, get in front of them, tell them what you're about, get them to like you, crack a joke, give them a lead magnet. Not only are you getting in front of the audience directly, not only is that bit of content going to get repurposed and shared around in a dozen different places in a dozen different formats, you're also getting a backlink from them for free. Now, if you tried to do that with written content, you'd have to do so much more work. You'd have to spend so much more money. Your rejection rate would be so much higher because even if you do offer to pay them, quite often they just, no, we're not going to take it because we got this other guest blog post that's a little bit better than yours and we're going to go run with that one instead. So I think that guest posting is like pushing a boulder uphill in 2025. If you want to build backlinks from high authority sites quickly in a really white hat way, get on a podcast, be a guest on their podcast if they have one, or start your own and invite them on yours. And then when you've released the episode, get them to share it, get them to stick a link, write a blog post about it, get them to post that up on their website. And people are pretty open to that. Like if you've just had a conversation with them for half an hour or an hour, you kind of become friends in that time. So now you're someone that they know and they probably will do a favor for. So I absolutely think that if you are looking at doing content marketing in 2025 and you've just started a SaaS business and you're trying to grow it and you want to build up a bunch of backlinks and get your content in front of people, you should consider either starting a podcast of your own or at the very least go out and be a guest on as many podcasts as you can possibly get on top of. And with that, we talked about this in the interview with Stuart Townsend as well. You start off with the ones that are easy and then you get those recordings and then you use those as leverage to kind of climb up to the next tier and then use those as leverage to climb up to the next tier. You got to climb up a mountain it's a ladder. There are rungs that you've got to climb up. You don't just go straight to Joe Rogan. But you work your way up. And if you are doing that diligently, maybe using a tool like Podcast Hawk, then you will get results from it. The key thing is this is less about getting customers directly from being on that podcast episode, more about getting email addresses by sharing your lead magnet and getting backlinks to help boost your content from in terms of SEO and just overall awareness. Because once people have seen you in a few different places and they've heard your name somewhere, and then they see an article written by you, or they see an ad from your business, or they see your face popping up in a Facebook ad on video, you're just planting as many seeds as possible in their mind. And so when the time comes for them to actually be like, oh yeah, who is that guy again? Who is that person who was talking about that thing? Yeah, he mentioned that he had a thing that might actually solve our problem. Let me look that up again. Who is that person again? And if they can find you easily enough, you've got a much better chance than some other random. So podcasts, big marketing hack for 2025. Anyway, on that topic, that's about the end of my hacks, my insights from 2024 that you can apply in 2025. By the way, if you or someone else that you know would like to be a guest on this podcast, I'm trying to steer it more towards 7-figure SaaS founders, sharing insights, or the marketing and sales people behind a SaaS business that got to that point. So founder, marketer, salespeople, those sorts of that's really the kind of the people that I'm going after. However, I'm happy to go away from that a little bit if you've got a particularly awesome story, a particularly interesting insight, something that would be really valuable to share with an audience of SaaS founders and marketers. Get in touch, drop me a message, or the contact details are in the description for this video. If you would love to see me interview someone in particular, let me know in the comments. So I've still got a bunch of slots open on my calendar for 2025. Got a few locked in and a few good ones coming. But I've got plenty that are open. So if there's someone in particular that you would love to see me interview, let me know, and hopefully we'll get them on the show. Even better if you've got their contact details and you can set me up with an intro. But if not, just mention their name and I'll do my best to get them on and have a chat with them. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoy 2025. I hope it's your best year yet. I'm looking forward to bringing you some awesome interviews, a bunch of insights and learnings, and hopefully what you learn from watching this or listening to this podcast will help you learn something that you can go and apply in your business right now, today, to help you have the best year you've ever had. Enjoy 2025, guys. We'll speak soon.